Hi, everyone. Today we host His Excellency Tom Alwindo, Namibian Minister of Mines and Energy, as he discusses the prospect for his country to become a green hydrogen hub. After serving as governor of the Bank of Namibia, Director General of the National Planning Commission, and then Minister of Economic Planning, now Minister, you are tackling one of the most important challenges for Namibia today and even the region. Green hydrogen as an opportunity to advance African decarbonization and the impact of energy innovation on African socio-economic development. Green hydrogen, also considered the new oil, is a gas produced entirely from renewable energies, which has the potential to provide clean energy to the industrial, transportation sectors, etc., for example. 1 kilo of green hydrogen produces about 3 times the energy produced by 1 kilo of gasoline without emitting greenhouse gases. Considered one of the most innovative and cleanest energies in the world, green hydrogen can solve the double need of energy self-sufficiency and the abandonment of fossil fuels. If the world wants to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 or sooner, hydrogen is a necessity, and green hydrogen will make up 25% of global energy demand by 2050. Africa is also preparing for this revolution. Countries are more and more involved: Ethiopia, Tanzania, South Africa, the DRC, Niger, Nigeria, and Namibia. Then, what are the Namibian assets and opportunities? Where the country draws its potential? Will the land of braves be the next hub of green hydrogen? Minister, we will be happy to hear you.
Thank you very much. And let me thank the Atlantic Council for hosting this very important event. And especially also our ambassador in our midst, Ambassador Mensa Williams, of course my colleague Minister Shemi, Minister Kanjode. Thank you very much for really hosting us this. Yes, I think I cannot assume that all of us are familiar with Namibia as a country. Maybe just by way of background, Namibia is one of the youngest African countries. In fact, we only got our independence not long ago in 1990. For some people might think, that's long ago, but it's not really a long time ago. And since then, we have been having very successful national elections, and 5 of those. As a country, we run a mixed economic system whereby we promote private capital. But we equally also encourage or do intervene as a government, especially where private sector is not always the solution. So it's a country that works. Now, what we want to talk about here is about green hydrogen. We have taken a conscious decision to say, we want Namibia to become a global hub or a hydrogen hub on the African continent. And we did that by, for example, our president, His Excellency Genkob, earlier this year, have launched our economic recovery plan that we call Harambee Prosperity Plan. And in that plan, there's a conscious decision to say, we want to wean ourselves from fossil fuel, not only because it makes economic sense, but equally, it's really something that we need to do for us to save the planet. And you may ask, why would Namibia want to do this? Why would we want to think we can be a hub for green hydrogen? Namibia is very endowed with very, very good, plentiful, renewable resource. You can think about the solar, you can think about the wind. Namibia, especially in the southern region of the countries, we have got the best wind resource, we've got the best solar resource. And therefore, we as a country, really, we are well placed to be the hub for the African continent. And this is really very important if we need to reach the Paris Agreement by 2050, as we all know that we have agreed that we need to do something to promote the climate change. And us transitioning from fossil fuel to green hydrogen is certainly going to help us to accelerate, probably to reach that goal even before 2050. Now, it's one thing to talk about what it is we want to do, but we're also doing some concrete steps for us to reach that goal of becoming a hub for green hydrogen. For example, our president has set up a council of ministers that is to supervise the whole process of developing the green hydrogen. We call it the Green Hydrogen Council, and that council consists of various ministers that are in charge of some of the sectors that are relevant to what we need to do. It can be the Minister of Environment, for example, the Minister of Finance is part of that, the Minister of Water, and also the Director General of National Planning Commission, who is actually the chair of the council. And that's a concrete step to make sure that there's a process is being followed up and things are being done, and not just to talk about that. And the other thing we've also done, we have recently issued an RFP, a request for proposals, from all potential interested investors to indicate what they can offer, what we can work together with. And we have to say we're quite surprised at the response we got. We're rather actually overwhelmed by what we have received. And right now we are busy evaluating those bids. And we are hoping that we can announce the winners of these bids during the COP26 in Glasgow. That is going to be there, I believe, is in November. So we are really taking some very good steps to make sure that actually it happens. And also the other step we have taken so far, we are now busy also crafting the strategy. That's going to be the rule book. That's going to tell us exactly how we're going to do that, whether now it's state actors or non-state actors like the investors. We need to have that rule book that tells everyone to say, this is how we're going to be doing that. So those are some of the steps that we are making to make sure that we really do become the hub for green hydrogen. Now, we know, of course, hydrogen can be used, it's got many uses. The market is still developing, but I think there are now indicators. There was also even a study done by the World Bank that indicates that there's actually a developing market for green hydrogen, especially also for green ammonia. And therefore, really, I think if we continue to carry out those steps that we have already put ourselves to do, we certainly have got a very, very good opportunity to make sure that that happens. What we would really want to do is just to invite potential investors to work with us. It's a new journey, I think, as it was said, so there are some various countries that also are doing the same thing. It's an exciting journey, and we really want to invite everyone who's interested to work with us, not only because there are economic potentials that we have already talked about, but equally because really it's one way for us to save the planet. We only got this one planet, which I want to call planet A. There's no planet B, there's only one planet. And therefore, I think it's very, very important that we do whatever we need to do as individual countries to make sure that all of us support some of this initiative to make sure that we reach the Paris Agreement goals. So I would like to stop here and to have a discussion as to how best we can go about this. So thank you very much.
Mr. Minister, thank you so much. It's just such an honor to have you here. Thank you for these remarks, and thank you for spending your time at the Atlantic Council today. My name is Randy Bell. I am the director of the Global Energy Center here at the Atlantic Council, and it is my pleasure to welcome our in-person audience as well as our virtual audience to what is the new Atlantic Council studio. We have a fantastic panel to discuss the minister's remarks and Namibia's really ambitious plans. We have Andy Herskowitz, Chief Chief Development Officer at the U.S. Development Finance Corporation. We have His Excellency Obeth Kanjos, the Minister and Director General of the National Planning Commission at the Republic of Namibia. We also have His Excellency Ebumbu Shimi, the Minister of Finance from Namibia. And we have Dr. Saravak Shuri, the founder and president of SVP Energy International and SVB Green Access. So it's really a wonderful, wonderful group of people we have together to discuss for the next 45 minutes or so. Let me ask Minister Kanjos the first question, which is, why has Namibia chosen to pursue green hydrogen specifically? What drove the country to make this decision?
Thank you, Director. Several reasons. Our coastline is about 1,500 kilometers. All of it for the 200 odd kilometers inland along that strip of country is desert. The Namib, the oldest desert in the world. And much along that, the wind regimes speak of some excellent potential outputs for these kind of projects. And especially the southern part of the first maybe 200-300 kilometers of that strip of land. We're now calling for requests for proposals for anybody wanting to kind of like study, come in, look at the solar and wind regimes. From the data we get, it speaks to us as if we're not just competing against some of the best coastlines in the world. In fact, we are pitching as the only coastline with that kind of number. So the government then simply realized we've got the irradiation potential of that strip of land, the wind potential of that strip of land. We've chosen that part of the land to actually start doing benchmark studies, pilot studies, so we can literally understand the type of wind regimes, the type of solar radiation regimes. And not only is it next to a port, we've sectored out pieces of land that we are actually putting up for RFPs. And we've had 30 initial investors flown in to a port of Ludritz about a month or so ago. 55 of the other investors were virtual. Everybody wants a piece of the pie because the number simply speaks to the output that we are looking for in terms of liquid hydrogen. The sea is close by. We have quite a number of industries in the Northern Cape. We have part of the only zinc mine in that part of the world. All of it is power intensive. And here we have the wind regimes, the solar regimes. And then obviously, because we have renewable potential that is so great, we are able to actually produce liquid hydrogen. The port is next to, it's very close by. We can evacuate much of that liquid hydrogen to the niche markets in the world. So it's a nascent industry that we are actually putting up enough money. We are in a relationship with the Ministry of Education of Germany that is actually putting out money for research, scholarships, and pilot plans in order for us to capture Germany as part of the market potential for our future new industries. So the reasons are all for everybody to see. We need power as a country. We need access power for the region. For too long, we've depended on fossil fuel. Decarbonizing and de-risking the environment is part of the new regime. We are looking to develop the entirety of that legal framework such that all of what we do at the end of the RFP, we can now actually go to pieces of that land, carve them up and put it up for industries to take the best in terms of what that wind and solar regime does. And that piece that we're starting off will be replicated throughout the entire 1,500 kilometer of coastline. I ended at that.
That's fantastic. You're thinking about green hydrogen as an export, but how do you think these projects will also help provide more energy access for the country?
Super energy will be produced. Much of what we want to produce, we know today. The conventional generation of energy has been throughout coal. And South Africa has been the most dominant of that. We import power from South Africa. We also do get power from the South African power pool, Southern African power pool. So our very own base of generation of power is actually coming to the front. It's actually coming to be in an excess position. So we will be able to export power, not just liquid hydrogen, not just use that for the larger sectors of heavy industries, but we will have an excess power that we put up to the region, most probably through the Southern African power pool, and most definitely to Eskom and the South African power regime. So our net position will be tremendously improved. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Let me turn now to Minister of Finance, because there are obviously financial implications. So first, how do you see paying for it, and what do you think this does to the overall economy of Namibia?
Well, thank you. Paying for it, I believe my two colleagues have already said that we have invited potential investors to come and work for us. So this potential will bring capital, and therefore much of the capital will actually be private capital. Obviously, government will have to bring its part in the sense of, developing further infrastructure that will support these new industries. For instance, we have to expand the harbour. In fact, we have plans to actually build another harbour in that area so that we can evacuate the green hydrogen to the markets. So that will be done in partnership with the private sector. So part of the money will come from a significant part of the money will come from the private sector. Government will bring in that each part to be able to create the necessary infrastructure that will support such industries. How are we going to raise the money? We believe that many of these projects can be done in a triple P, in the private-public partnership fashion, where we can tap into private capital, and so government will only bring a small part of the capital. So that's how we believe we can fund it. We are also thinking, because we are helping to decarbonize the world economy, so to speak, to decarbonize the planet. So there's money that is shifting in that area. So I think for the first time we are seeing a lot of capital shifting into projects that are supporting carbon neutrality or supporting environmentally friendly projects. So over the last 5 years or so, there's significant interest in this area, and we also want to tap into that market. Thinking about green bonds, sustainable bonds. So those are the kind of financial instruments that we believe we can also tap into as we build supporting infrastructure to support these industries. I hope I answered your question.
That's fantastic. And then the second half. So how does this change the overall economy of Namibia when these projects are all put together and you're an exporter of green hydrogen?
Well, tremendously. If we start to, first of all, if you just look at our power dynamics and energy dynamics, so all of a sudden we start to be an exporter of energy. We will no longer going to be an importer of energy, and that will significantly change our balance of payment. So the money that we used to export by buying electricity outside, we actually now going to be paid in foreign currency to export, or when we are exporting electricity outside. Not only that, he talked about the Director General talked about exporting green hydrogen in a form of ammonia or in any other form. So again, that is going to bring in foreign currency. But we're also thinking about a cluster of industries that are going to support the green hydrogen industry. Yeah, the fact that you have green energy, you can do anything with energy. Yeah, we can now start to talk to those who want to manufacture steel there, so that we can have green steel. He talked about zinc. We have a zinc mine there that is, in fact, wanting to process more zinc from the neighboring countries. You can produce this zinc with green energy, and you can actually get good premiums on this zinc because it's produced with renewable energy. So a cluster of industries can actually develop around the green hydrogen industry. And that is, again, going to significantly boost and diversify the economy from its traditional sources of growth.
That's fantastic. I'm going to come back to this and ask Andy a question, but I first need to go to my colleague Rama, who I forgot to introduce because she's not in the room, but she's looking over my shoulder right here. Rama, and I know you have to leave in a little bit, so I want to come to you. But Rama, tell me, let's widen the aperture a little bit. Namibia has these really ambitious plans. How do you see this impacting the region of Southern Africa?
Thank you, Randy, for having me. Yeah, your question is very, very important, and I would like to strengthen and dig deeper on that. Africa is of course a continent with a particularly high potential for green energy. We know that, you said that. 640 million Africans do not have access to energy, though, which corresponds to the lowest level in the world. In Southern Africa, it is absolutely the same. Access to energy is vital, not only for achieve health and education goals, but also to reduce the cost of doing business, to unlock economic potential and create jobs. Inadequate access to electricity causes hundreds of thousands of deaths each year from the use of wood-burning stoves for cooking, for example. Hinders the operation of hospitals and emergency services, undermines educational goals, and increases the cost of doing business. So access to electricity is therefore one of the key factors for inclusive growth in the region. Once again, Africa has a huge energy potential, but currently uses only part of it. How, Minister, do you explain this? How do you explain that Africa does not use its huge potential? What are the obstacles? And what do you think of the policies carried out by development agencies, in particular the African Development Bank with its new deal for energy in Africa? How do you appreciate that to fix this?
Rama's asked you both a question, so let's go to you first.
Yeah, can you repeat the question, just so that I get it nicely? Yes.
Two questions.
Two questions.
Yeah, my first question is about how do you explain that in the area and beyond that, the region, the huge energy potential of Africa is not used as it should be. What are the obstacles? And the second question is, what do you think about the policies coming from the development agencies, such as the African Development Bank, to fix this situation?
My background is oil and gas. I am a petroleum geologist. And in the last 20 years, my work around oil and gas actually stumbled that much of what Africa produced in the fossil fuel industry sees the seas of the world take that off to other markets. And Africa, in the period up to now, I don't think does any more than 5% inter-Africa trade in terms of that energy. So there is a huge impediment as to why Africa doesn't trade in terms of its energy resource. It's the same for renewable energies. While that potential exists, there isn't enough infrastructure that allows inter-Africa trade, whether it's renewables or would-be green hydrogen potentials or liquid fuels in that. It still has to be developed. So there's a lot of policy impediments in terms of why Africa actually does not use that. So it's no wonder that when you actually fly the world, you see the spots that's actually the darkest. So our work needs to go down to the very bottom of actually unbundling the policy sort of gridlock in terms of Africa trading with itself, in terms of Africa taking this very potential, distribute it to its very last bits of dark spots in villages, and bringing that very energy to the people. Not just cooking, it's lighting, it's e-learning, it's the entire IT industry that will actually come from the billion-odd people that actually is the population of Africa. Also, the $1 trillion potential trade there is in the African intertrade if it was developed. The African Continental Free Trade Arrangements, it's one hopeful way of how we can actually unbundle that and bring green hydrogen, green energy to the very basic villages that people need to use to enhance the new industry. This is a nascent industry. We have to develop that, the IT industry with the youthfulness of the African population. So there is great potential that this happens. So it's one of the issues that we need to look at. Now, with Namibia, we intend to develop that very part of the legal regime of how this is going to be factored into the policy framework. So it's not just going to, we have nothing at the very moment. So part of what we are doing is to not just bring this nascent industry to bear, but also with it the full legal framework of how we're going to deal with this issue. And hopefully we will be in a position to actually broaden it, take it out to every bit of the population, not just at the level of Namibia, not just at the level of that sector of the country that we are looking at, but broadly by enmassing it in its export and footprint so it touches everybody. That's the first question that I will be able to deal with. I'll leave the second for my colleague.
Yeah, I believe the Director General has already answered all the questions. But I think she has raised a very important point about the role of developmental institutions. We're coming from the UNGA, the General Assembly, and one of the narratives there is its partnership, which is linked to the SDGs. You may recall that the last SDG is about partnership, because we can only decarbonize the world. We can only reduce our footprints on the planet if we all work together. So Africa needs to work together, and I think Africa has become alive to the fact that we all need together. We all need to collaborate at the regional level. We all need to collaborate at the continental level. So when we are talking about green hydrogen in Namibia, we are not only thinking about ourselves, as we were saying before. We are thinking about the region. We're thinking about a neighbor who needs clean energy. For instance, South Africa, much of the energy that they produce come from coal. And coal is becoming a dinosaur. And therefore, we have to work together. We are already seeing some interest from South Africa at the government level. We are seeing interest from South Africa, from private companies that want to partner with us. So, one of the South African energy company actually is one of those that have put in their bids to work with us on the green hydrogen in industry. So partnership is really, really very, very important, and therefore it's not only partnership among countries, but also partnership with development institutions, institutions such as the World Bank, to bring the technical assistance that is required to help the African countries to create all these energy projects so that they reach finality. Because sometimes we start things because we do not have all the required skills. These projects do not reach finality, and therefore that's the role of development institutions to work together with African countries, so that we can make use of these energy resources that we have.
Wonderful, thank you. I'd love to go to Andy now. Andy is the Chief Development Officer at DFC, but also used to run Power Africa, so has great perspective on this. And actually, there's a question from the audience as well, so if you're out there in Zoom land, you can put questions in the Q&A, and I'll try to get to them. This one comes from Larry Schaefer, and it is, how does the DFC feel about these projects, and more broadly, renewable energy development and green hydrogen development in Namibia and the region?
Okay, so let's back up for a minute. I'm jumping out of my chair because I think the gentleman from Namibia might not remember that I was the coordinator for Power Africa, and I sat with President Geingob 2 years ago in Maputo trying to say, we want to do everything that we can, and I had the World Bank and the African Development Bank at my side with the US government saying, what can we do to develop large-scale solar in Botswana and Namibia? Yeah. Because for people who don't know this, it's the greatest resources in the world. Low population density, high sun quality, the ability to trade east to west across 8 different markets, and basically you could call it the solar Inga if you wanted to for Southern Africa. And so I'm the greatest advocate for renewable energy probably in the US government for Namibia. And I'm also probably the biggest irritant within the US government because as Secretary Kerry and others are getting ready to make big announcements and focus on different things, I'm the one who keeps saying, can you focus on Southern Africa? Can we focus on Namibia and Botswana and see what we can do in Southern Africa because it's the greatest potential? And I sat with a company. So I'm now in a different role. I'm now at the US government's development bank where we have a $60 billion ceiling. And I know there are a lot of people who want to invest in these projects. And we'd love to do it alongside with the IFC, the African Development Bank, and others. And so we are looking at green hydrogen projects, and we're enthusiastic about green hydrogen projects. But we want to get to the projects that are going to produce the green hydrogen, which are the wind and the solar. And so the question that I really, so everyone's asking questions, but the offer that I want to make is, what do we need to do to keep moving the ball along? And I know that the Rockefeller Foundation, which is now a partner of DFC, they've got their own big initiative, and others who are going to be looking to put a lot of money in towards the energy transition. But we also have to make sure that we have, and I know we have the political commitment, but the capacity and the staffing and the people to operationalize all of this so that we don't just talk about the opportunities for investment, but when are we going to put out the tenders? And who's going to review the tenders? And when are we going to move forward? And can we do something like South Africa's Renewable IPP office and build it up? Because we saw them over a period of 5-10 years become very, very active. So I personally, I want to move from the talk to the implementation because my dream is to see Southern Africa really serve as the power source for the African continent and for the world. We met with the president of Zambia this morning, and I didn't get a chance to talk to him about it because my view is you also have all the hydro resources in Zambia to serve as a battery as well. So I do agree. And in fact, one of my meetings on DRC was a mining company saying, we're going to produce green hydrogen from the Inga Dam. And he sat there and lectured me for about an hour, and he didn't realize that I know the Inga Dam project very, very well. And I wished him a lot of luck in seeing that happen. But you all can really make it happen. You have the resources, you've got everybody who's lined up to try to work with you on it, and really control your own energy destiny.
Look, in my view, we got started. Yeah. It's at a very rudimentary base. But we got into an MOU with the Federal Republic of Germany to help us put out the initial base of capacities that is required. We channeling students to universities in Germany through this MOU. We bringing in German technology, Australian technology. We bringing in players in the industry. What we got started with is the very early part of it. So perhaps you are putting the carts before the horses, as it were. We want to follow process so that we can lure all that $60 billion, if you will, but we won't be able to consume it. Right. When you put down an elephant, you consume it in small bits and pieces so that everybody gets the juicy part of it. So it's superfluous to get you all in, but you'll find us inadequately prepared.
Right.
So what we're doing is, if that's
Yeah, and what can we do to help? That's the...
what you can do to help, perhaps get in, hold us our hands, take us with, let's develop what needs done in the first places. The regime needs developed. The capacity needs to be put in. The management and adjudication of the process that we need to tailor-made in a manner that speaks to everyone out there with the wish and the dollar to back it all up. And that's how we going to get it done. So when there is absolutely nothing of the sort, because it's a totally new industry, COVID has actually exposed us to the extent that we need to actually get to do things and quite fast. And for that to happen is we need that sort of level of start. Right now, to just get everybody in, we're going to bottleneck sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Maybe just for me to come in, maybe you should bring back the Minister of Mines and Energy, because this is really his area. But we are equally passionate about the Power Africa project. So he can eloquently talk more about it than me. But I believe it's a great opportunity, because we're not only looking for power to produce green hydrogen. We are looking for power to power Namibia first, and power the region. And therefore, the Power Africa project together with Botswana is really a great project. But
the nice thing about this with the green hydrogen is, because if there's concern about the offtake, you have your offtake now, right?
Yes.
So you could go big quickly. Yeah. I mean, assuming that everyone understands how to produce a hydrogen. I agree with you. Exactly. To take that slowly, make sure everyone has the capacity.
Exactly.
But the whole question of the offtake gets solved, because you can just produce green hydrogen with whatever is not being consumed elsewhere.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I love this.
Yeah. But I believe the Power Africa project is still continuing.
It's still continuing. Yes.
Understand
and Power Africa, USAID, and others are still. Everyone is anxious to. Everybody wants to pitch in and help.
Yeah. No. We
I think there is space.
Yeah.
There is absolute space for that sort of help. And the sooner we get into getting our hands dirty around the power issue, the liquid hydrogen issue, the ammonia parts of it, we have a whole 3,100 hectares of green schemes.
Right.
We're a dry country. All that needs to be powered up. Yeah. Food must be produced, and we must become food self-sufficient. So there is a whole world out there for us to play. Yeah. But we need the partners to handhold ourselves, and we get moving and fast.
And DFC does have an active portfolio in Namibia, working in food and other areas as well, in agriculture. So we're excited to continue partnering with you.
Okay. Very good.
Let me pivot to Sarah for a moment and widen the aperture. How do you see green hydrogen fitting into the energy mix, and what other energy opportunities do you see in Namibia and in the region?
Thank you, Randy. So it has been already mentioned and alluded to why green hydrogen could be very important for Namibia and South Africa. If I just want to classify them, is that when we move to South Africa, two major things is happening. As mentioned by Director General, most of the power generation is generated from coal-fired power plants. And the reason for that is the gas is mostly north, and the Sahara Desert make it almost impossible for having these power and also fuel resources transferred between the two north and south of Africa. So majority of power and electricity is generated by coal-fired power generations. The other thing is the demographic. As in North, the demography of the population is very dense, but in South Africa, one of the main issues and problems is the low density of population. So it's very hard for, when we're talking about energy access, to have a centralized grid that would power Africa. So why hydrogen would be interesting, or green ammonia, is because if we have those fuel cells of green ammonia, we could power different decentralized communities, potentially, if we have at that time pilot plants and enough both investment and technologies that are adequate. The other issue is the population in Africa, that from about 1.3 billion people in 2019 is going to almost double to 2.4 billion people by 2050. So we have a large population. Obviously, the energy lack of energy access is going to grow. But one thing that is very important is the power-water nexus, the lack of safe water and sanitation in most of places in Africa, South Africa, and Namibia. So having clean, as we're talking about energy transition, especially in south part of Africa, which most of the power is generated by coal, it's very important to have a clean source of energy. Ammonia has a high density, would be helpful potentially for increasing the energy access in scattered populations. But as Andy made a point, it's very important first to create, to have that clean power generated, and then we have feeding that into a green hydrogen. And Namibia has great sources. One is uranium. We didn't talk about it today. Being in Washington, D.C., policy, it's very important to consider that China is all over the place, and Russia. Most of the assets of uranium equities are owned by or taken over by China and Russia. If I'm not mistaken, there is no U.S. presence in that field. So even power generation from nuclear, or if you're looking at pink hydrogen, there are huge opportunities in Namibia. And unfortunately, there are not much American investment or presence there. Recently, China and Russia, the both presidents of both countries had meetings, and they are deepening their partnership into increasing their investment and their activities in nuclear power generation, and also pink hydrogen, into deepening their contribution for clean energy. So there are a lot of opportunities. But putting my small investment hat now from scholar side, having Andy here and ministers here, as a company that we're trying to find, we have Japanese partners that previously they were trying to have assets in nuclear and uranium mines, but unfortunately because of the Fukushima in Japan, they pulled out. But there is a huge interest for investment, especially off-grid investment in both power generation that ultimately feeds into water desalination and sanitation in Africa and Namibia. If you're very interested, before our meeting, I just asked Andy if they would finance the project, but it goes back all to you, Director General and Minister of Energy, of what are those we need some groundwork, because we have been very fortunate to have Ambassador. She's very, very helpful and encouraging to us to understanding the country and thinking about opportunities to invest, but we need to have more legal and more basic work done on your side, so we could enter and work into those projects and exactly know what is that energy strategy that Minister of Energy Alvindo mentioned, that the country is going to have a macro energy strategy that would be really a helpful guidance for investors and potential investors to know where and how to start entering the country.
There's a lot of work being done around reform of how we deal with investment. At the last formation of the current government, His Excellency the President split the investment function away from the conventional Ministry of Trade, Industrialization and Investment, if you will. And that function is now structured in his office with a CEO and a board that simply looks at how do we deal with investment, how do we expedite, how do we improve the ease of doing business and keep it at that. So there's a whole infrastructure that does that. And in the last 2-3 days in New York, we hosted networking lunches where we actually spoke to investors around this complete new function. It deals with wanting to appease each one of you in the investment space. That confidence is being created. We then deal with an agglomeration of ministers through 2 cabinet committees, of which both the Minister of Finance and myself are alternating chairs. We deal with issues of complaints and proposals from the board to actually putting it to ministers before that become policy. So we are really dealing with, let's move away from a period of up to 60 days type business from start to actually functioning. So we are actively addressing this, and we are dealing with investor complaints in a manner that is business-like through a board. We are policymakers. The board is an executive body that functions under the office of the president to deal with investor issues. So I believe that if you do come to Namibia today, you find us in the middle of it all, but we are making groundbreaking advances in this space. So fear nothing, be afraid of nothing. Come to Namibia, we will deal with you in a manner that after having touched, felt, and actually mingled with us, you will walk off with a smile.
That's fantastic. So we're getting towards the end, so I want to make sure that everybody gets a final word in. But I do have one final question, which is, you came from New York and the UN General Assembly, and you're meeting with many different partners. And you have partners with Germany already, but now you're here in Washington. What would you like to see from Washington and from these meetings here?
I'd like to see a portion of that $60 billion talk to us. But then, I ought to... well, yes, you need that. But like I said, as it were, it would be superfluous for me to put the cart before the horses. Let me arrange the processes in a manner that that cart has the horses at the front and we are able to pull off. If you understand what I mean. Of course. If you understand what I mean. So our economy is actually ravaged by COVID. We've lost growth over the last couple of years. And the issue is, and the president's focus and the government's focus is, deal with unemployment, create new industries, get the youth to be employed, get everybody to somehow feel the prosperity of the economy. Also make sure that everyone is included in the goods of the economy. So that really is our overall task and obligation, to move all of that. Like I said, we need to get the cart in a manner that it can pull off. And for that, we need the capacity factor brought in. We need to expedite the regime. All of that will form part of the cake. For now, I'm speaking to, I see and I'm hearing there's money somewhere, but I can't really take it all up. So let me move forward, and with your help, hold us.
We need to help you build the cart.
Yes.
Right? So let us know what you need to help to build that cart.
Great.
So I think we have some action that needs to happen immediately after this meeting. So, Andy, final thoughts?
No, just look. As I said, I am one of the biggest advocates for Namibia and renewable energy in Namibia. So I'm really excited about this. So again, the U.S. government remains, disposed and excited to be fully supportive of the efforts that you're pursuing. And so we look to you as a partner and see what we can do to help you, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Now, it is almost 5 o'clock on a Friday, but nonetheless, you're going to start working on this right away.
This is why I agreed to do a panel at 4 o'clock on a Friday on the most beautiful day of the year in Washington, D.C. I'm like, wait, Namibia's coming to town? I'm going to be there.
If it's an MOU required to start kicking stuff off, why not? We can start.
We've got some blank paper. We'll get started right after this, and then we will record it and put it on the internet.
Very good, absolutely.
Mr. Minister, any final thoughts?
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, we appreciate the support that we are getting from the U.S. I think the work that has been done by Power Africa so far, I think it's significant. I think we need to continue with this effort so that we can finalize the feasibility study. We need power. Namibia needs power. So it's not only for, as I said, for green hydrogen. But we need power for the whole region. So that's one. I think on the green hydrogen side, I think there have been concrete steps already taken. So the fact that we are in the market looking for those who want to develop those sites, and these are not going to be the only sites. This is basically just the beginning. So we will be in the market in the future looking for investors who like to develop other sites as well, where they can produce wind and power and solar energy and probably produce hydrogen. So, but what I also want to mention is the fact that around the green hydrogen area, there are a number of activities that are linked to that. So we have, for instance, what we call the Southend Development Corridor. Now, in that corridor is green hydrogen. We talked about zinc before, but we also talked about agricultural land that needs to be developed next to a big dam. So we are now busy packaging all these projects into projects that can be financed, and probably that's when we are going to start talking about tapping into the resources that you have mentioned. So we are also looking at upgrading our rail facility, for instance, of our rail infrastructure in that area, so that we can ship some of these mineral resources there. Some of it are coming from South Africa. But that rail infrastructure may also need some private capital. So we think about concessioning maybe a part of that. It's still early days, but we have to package these projects so that they become bankable, and once they are bankable, you can then come with the finances.
No, President Biden just announced a $1 billion commitment from the DFC to finance food security and agriculture. And we have an active agricultural portfolio in Namibia, but we'd love to expand that as well.
You mentioned infrastructure, and I wish we could have gotten that because I have a whole series of questions on infrastructure, and particularly hydrogen midstream infrastructure is really interesting and requires a lot of technical skills. So maybe we can talk about that offline because it's really fascinating. I want to give the final word to Sarah here. Let us know sort of your thoughts on where this could go and how this might help Namibia.
I try to be quick, so maybe we could get a chance for Minister of Energy and Mining to also give his final thoughts. But I think this is the vision is a very grand vision, and it's very doable, very practical in a close to near term to mid-term. And I hope that after this meeting, things move as ambitiously as we were talking and positive.
Sarah, thank you. And it looks like we're going to have the minister. Would you like to come back up? And we're going to give you a microphone. You've got the microphone on you. So please come. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, the final thought is, as Andy mentioned, the Power Africa. It's good that they actually remind us that we are hoping that we finalize that study that we are doing. Remember we signed that MOU not long ago. Actually long ago. So hopefully that can also be one of the things we need to finalize. And also you remember initially I think we were worried about the size of the plant and what is going to be used. But now if it can be used for green hydrogen production, we shouldn't even worry about how big it is, because we need as big as possible for it to be able to have all this ammonia being done. But we can really just say we're seriously looking at this. We want investors, we want people to work with us. And as you say, maybe there's still some question investors need to be answered, some of the steps that need to be taken. But certainly, I think with the investment promotion board that we have now in the country, a number of things actually will work much, much smoother. And we look forward for you to come and invest with us. And the $60 billion being talked about, seriously, it can be leveraged. whether it's the cart before the horse or whichever it is, there is something really happening here, and therefore I think if we can all work together and talk to each other and understand where we are and what are the processes, I think Namibia certainly is poised to be a green hydrogen hub on the continent, and we look forward to work with all of you. So thank you very much for hosting this roundtable discussion.
Mr. Alwindo, thank you so much. Thank you to all of our panelists. This was really a remarkable conversation and a remarkable program that we're seeing in the making. It's history in the making. And if there is an MOU, you heard about it here first. And so Andy, get to work on that. We're going off to a reception, but we give you some paper and start writing that. I want to thank everyone who helped put this event together. Zach Strauss, Zaina Wirinen, Madeline Howe, Ambassador Yade, Alyssa Harvey, and Ambassador Williams, and all of our colleagues at the Namibian Embassy. Thank you so much. We have another Atlantic Council Global Energy Center event coming up on Monday morning at 8:30. We'll host a discussion with His Excellency Mohammed Barkindo, the Secretary General of OPEC, Halima Croft from RBC Capital Markets, and Majid Jaffer from Crescent Petroleum on the role of oil and gas in a net zero world. That should be very interesting and I hope a very dynamic conversation. And then please look at the Atlantic Council website for future Global Energy Center and Africa Center events. It's always a pleasure to work with our Africa Center colleagues. Thank you all for tuning in on Zoom, and for those in the audience here today, thank you for coming on a Friday afternoon. And again, thank you to all of our panelists. We're looking forward to working with you all. So thanks so much.